Alright, let's go. So I'm here in my projects folder. First thing I want to do is create a PHP folder because this is where we'll be working out of. There it is. Here's my PHP folder. And what I want to do is I want to download PHP. So I'm going to go to, I'm already on php.net here. And I want to grab this one and I want to copy the link location and I'm going to curl -o and shift insert to paste, and this is going to download the source code for me. There it is. So we're going to tar xvf, I think it is. I can never properly remember this tar command. PHP, there we go. Cool. Alright, so I've got the source code, I've untarred it. If I look in here, here's all of the files. So let's crack open tmux so we can get a split and do two things at once. So if I have a look at readme.md, generally speaking with open source Linux projects, the README is a really good place to start. It'll kind of introduce you to the sort of the tools that come with the source code. And here's the part we're interested in, building PHP from source. So they're saying uses auto tools on Unix systems, so build, configure, make J4, make install rather. This is a pretty common pattern for Unix style open source C projects, and you'll see it a little bit around the place. So it's worth learning now because you'll be able to apply it to other projects. Right, so build conf first. The configure script is already built. Okay, cool. So it's saying run configure to proceed with customizing the PHP build. And this is the awesome thing about building your own software. This is one of the advantages. It's more complex, obviously, but you've got much more fine-grained control over what you're actually doing. So if we run this configure-help, this is just to give you an idea. There is a lot of stuff here. A lot of stuff. More than I'd probably care to know at this point in time. We just want to get the thing built. There is one stipulation that I've got right out of the box, is that I want to customize the installation folder. And the way you do that in using configure is you set this thing called prefix, which is essentially the root folder where you want to install. So for me, I actually want to do it in projects, PHP install. If I didn't do this, it'd by default it would get installed to user local. Now that's fine, but the problem is that all C projects are getting installed to user local that I compile myself. Now that is a good thing in one sense because the default paths and a lot of other sort of nice convenience that a typical Linux system will give you, but it can be a little bit difficult when you swap out, when you want to remove, when you want to replace. It'll also make things more difficult when we push out and deploy and do things like build Docker images in the future. So for now, trust me, we don't want to put it in the default. We want to localize it. But I would say if you're just interested in developing locally, and you certainly were not container inclined, installing it into the default location is perfectly acceptable. Right, so I'm going to use PHP install, and what this is going to do is a bunch of things. Among which it'll check my compiler and it'll check if I've got all of the required dependencies. Now, I've gone through this before offline, and I have a number of the dependencies already, but the really nice thing about configure is it'll tell you in no uncertain terms, you need to install this, you need to install that. So there'll be a few other packages around the place like libxml, and SSL maybe. There's a few of them that PHP requires. Fortunately, this will tell you what they are, and in this situation, I think it's perfectly fine to install those via apt. It's just the main PHP project that we're concerned with. Okay, enough talking. So this is complaining about SQLite. I again have done this already, so I anticipated this problem. So let's go configure -- help. And this is way too much output to look through. So what we'll do is we'll use grep to filter out anything with SQ in it. And this is much better. So what we want to do is we want to tell the configure that we want to go without SQLite 3 because I'm not interested in using it. And then the same thing without PDO SQLite, like that. Okay, so now the configure script should not check for that, which is good because we don't actually want to use those technologies. So we're going to let this run. I'm anticipating it will be successful this time because, like I said, I've done this a couple of times offline now. Yeah, there's a lot to check. Cool. So that's worked, so we're ready. The next step is make, and this will compile our PHP from source code to bytecode. So that's happening there. Did you notice I set that J7 flag? That's to tell the make script to use 7 cores. So if I go htop, which is you'd have to install separately, you'll see all 8 cores of my Intel Core i7, my old Intel Core i7 lit up, which is what you want because you want the compile to go faster. Generally, the rule of thumb is the amount of cores you have on your system minus 1. So leave 1 core there for the operating system and other background tasks, and then you can take 7 cores to build your own, to do whatever you want to do. So we're going to let this finish, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so everything's done. So that would have built the project. So now in this folder will be all of the compiled files, but they won't be installed yet. So to install them, we go make install, and you can see it's going through and basically going to the prefix folder that I specified and installing all of the binaries that it's built. So now if I go back here, there's my install folder. If I go cd install, here are all of the files that PHP has installed for us. So there's a few of them. Most of them I actually don't know what they do, if I'm being perfectly honest. But what we're the most interested in is this binary directory. It's worth noting when I just as an aside, if I go to user local, you see a similar structure here. Most Linux, Unix based projects do that, where they have the binary executables in one folder, they'll have the library code in another folder, man is for man pages, etc, etc. Those are just Unix, Linux conventions. So when you install multiple programs, if you're used to, say, running Windows, you would expect the whole program to be in one folder, and if you were to delete that folder, you would be able to delete the program in principle. Whereas with Unix, it doesn't work that way. It's changing now because of containerization, and that's why we've done our install in the way we have. But traditionally, that's how we manage software in a Unix Linux environment. All right, so that's that. So let's go to our install, and let's go to our binary folder, and then we've got the PHP binary here. So if I run php-info, I think. Cool. So there's our, here's all our PHP info. Now I believe PHP these days has a built-in server. So let's test that. So this is just kind of like a shakeout. Like I just want to see everything working. So let's make a folder called sites, cd sites, cd sites, make test site. So this is, I guess, where I envisage having all my projects, test site. And then if we go index, index.php, and then we'll use the PHP tag, and then we'll call PHP info, which is the function that just buffs out kind of all the PHP info. And I believe we can just run php-s. So let's try that now. Install bin php-s localhost. Whoops. Localhost 9000. Let's give that a try. Alright, cool. So we've got a server up. Let's use our browser and hit that server. And you can see I've already done this before. Believe me, I am not usually this slick. I have already gone through this before, so I kind of know what I'm doing. I was fumbling around for quite a while to get to this point. Alright, so cool. So this is the PHP info, and you can see right here are our configuration options. Awesome. So there's a bunch of other stuff here. Take some time to, like, if you're new to PHP, take some time to look through this kind of stuff. My experience with PHP is meh. As far as sort of the kind of real like nuts and bolts of the language, there's better people, but to increase your understanding, all of this kind of data, this information that PHP just kind of gives you is really interesting, to me at least. So variables, credits, license, it's probably more up here. It also gives you information on modules that you've installed, which is what we're doing next. Okay, so that's all cool. No, we don't want to cancel that actually. Alright, so let's kill this. And let's go back. So we've got our sites folder, we've got our PHP, we've got our install. But we can't debug yet. And I think debugging is really important. So let's install a custom debugger into our PHP installation. And the custom debugger that I'm interested in is XDebug. Debugger and profiler tool for PHP. So this is what I want to install, and I've used this in the past. It gives us a few nice kind of things to have. Upgrades PHP, var dump, single step debugger to use with IDEs, stack traces, which are always a good thing, and recording every function call, blah blah blah, contains a profiler. Oh, and code coverage. I didn't actually know it did that. That's really handy. So we're going to be setting up PHP unit possibly in a future video. So that's kind of interesting. Alright, so I believe... the other side of this is probably VS Code, which I haven't actually got. But VS Code, you need to... So the way these debuggers work, as I understand, is when the binary executable, in our case PHP, is running, it opens up a port, and then the IDE or whatever you're writing in will connect to that port. And there's some sort of protocol that they both understand, and that's how you get the line-by-line stepping through. So I'm going to use Visual Studio Code for this because I just think it's kind of the simplest way to get started, but I think you can use kind of whatever IDE editor that you feel comfortable with. So again, enough talking, let's get to the installing. So we've got a couple of options here. Peckle, this, installing on Windows, installing from source, because we are doing PHP the hard way. We've got a clone URL. Alright, so let's try this. Yeah, alright, let's paste that in. Alright, so the other really nice thing about installing from source is you know you're always getting the latest. Alright, so if we go cd XDebug, git log, okay, Derek, thank you, Sunday 9th of Feb. So quite recent. I'm recording this on the 22nd. So yeah, so like a week and a half ago, which is kind of cool. Alrighty, so we need to build this. Let's go back to our instructions. Compile. We don't have the tarball, we've got the zip, so we've already done that. So PHP eyes is not in your path. Make sure that it's make sure you use the PHP eyes that belongs to your PHP. So let's do that. So dot install bin PHP eyes. Cool, it did something. I don't actually know what PHP eyes does. I think it kind of tells the plugin about the... I think it tells the plugin about the PHP installation you have, maybe? I don't want to go too deep into this because it's probably not all that relevant. Compiling shed. Maybe it just PHP eyes help. I did that and it just gave me that usage. Okay, very unhelpful. Yeah, so basically I just think it registers with my current PHP installation. So configure enable XDebug seems kind of obvious. Again, we're going to use our prefix that we used before. Equals home Stewart projects PHP install. So that's our prefix, and then we need to enable XDebug. I think is the option that they were telling me to do. Yes, it is. All right, so let's configure that. All right, so this project is obviously a lot smaller and a lot more configurable, a lot quicker to configure rather. Make J7, same again. Interesting. That I did not expect. Am I running this correctly? Enable XDebug, enable XDebug, prefix. Why don't we leave make J7 off? Stewart, you should read the output. So there's a configure error, so no wonder the make isn't working. So it's saying cannot find PHP config, please use with PHP config path. Now I believe PHP config is in my bin folder in the install, and that was provided by PHP. And sure enough, there it is. So that's good. So it's saying to use the with PHP config equals, and then we're going to go home, Stewart, projects, PHP install, bin, PHP config, which is this one. Cool. That's better. All right, definitely no error that time. Let's do a make. I'm not even going to bother telling it how many cores I've got. Just make the thing on one core. It shouldn't be too big. Famous last words. Old Core i7 too. I'm instantly regretting this decision. Ah, good. Okay. So libraries have been installed too. Alrighty, that looks good. So then we want to do a make install. Cool. So it's actually giving me some inline instructions. Okay, so don't do what Stewart don't do does. Here I have totally not even read the message. The message says, where are we? The message says, note, please disregard the message. You should add extension xdebug.so to PHP ini. This is omitted by the Peckle installer. It does not work for XDebug. If I had have actually read the message, I probably would have saved myself about 10 to 15 minutes of messing around. But, just so you know, always use Zend extension, not extension. Let's watch this idiot try and figure that out after he was told. You should add this to PHP ini. Now, I want to just make sure that XDebug is not in my PHP configuration until I do that. So let's just verify that now. Actually, I don't need to go in here. If I go .install bin php info, and then we'll use our old grep trick, XDebug. Okay, nothing. So let's go back to this window, and we want to add to our PHP ini. I don't know where the PHP ini should be. Maybe PHP info will tell us. No. Okay, so there it is. So it's telling me that it's in lib. Cool. Alright, so let's do a vim install lib php.ini, and what we want to do is we want to add extension equals x xdebug.so, like that. Not quite sure how it gets the path. Let's not hard code the path for now. Let's not go the full path. So I guess if I just do the PHP info again with XDebug. Hey. Alright, so we have our nice little test program. Let's save it. Let's go to sites, test site. I don't have SZF installed. Nope. Install PHP. Bin PHP. Install bin PHP -s localhost 8000. I might just keep the server running in the background now. Let's do this again. Okay, that looks. Today is Friday. Probably a time zone issue there because it's actually Saturday here. I'm gonna pretend that that's fine for now. It's probably giving me the UTC time. Let's not worry about time zones for now. One problem at a time. All right. So what I want to do is I want to hook this program up to my debugger, and I need to work out how to install Visual Studio Code on Ubuntu. So.
Don't know who you're gonna meet.
Alright, let's run our script. And our breakpoint hasn't hit. Why not? Why hasn't it hit?
Because you don't know who you're gonna meet.
Maybe it doesn't work with a PHP local server. That's the only thing I could think. PHP local server XDebug? Getting started. Remote enable 1. Aha. Aha. Okay, so it looks like remote debugging is actually disabled. Now they probably do that by default. So that's probably what we want to do. So this, I would say this goes into my PHP ini file, which is fine. Alright, so shift insert. Okay, so remote enable 1, remote port 9000, your local host address. Those quotes look wrong as well. Local host, I'm guessing. Remote, yes. Just replace these. Replace these. XDebug ID key. That's interesting. Saying PHP Storm, I'm not using PHP Storm, I'm using Visual Studio Code. Here's our debugger here, so that all should be in order. Let's hit that. And what do you know, we've got debugging. So I don't know why I didn't have to set that session. But I didn't. I wonder why I didn't have to set that session. Maybe it's because this attaches itself. And look at this, looky. So we've got all of these debugging values. We've got our files array. We've got our get, post, request server. Everything in the request that we would expect to have. And now I can step over F10, 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 and script renders. So beautiful. So let's just sum up what we've done. How are we going for time here? 45 minutes, my goodness me. So let's just sum up what we've done. We've written a small PHP script, but more significantly, we have what is a full running localized PHP installation with our very own PHP ini that we don't have to rely on the operating system or a package manager to update for us. We've got the latest version of PHP. We've got the ability to change versions of PHP whenever we want. We've got a completely self-contained install, and we've got the latest version of XDebug working. And we can reinstall that at any time we need to. So please leave me feedback, guys. That would be much appreciated, because I would love to keep this going. And if you run into any issues, definitely put them in the comments, because I will try and read those as often as I can.